Good morning. It's good to be back in Australia. It is a tough time in America right now. And I'm glad to be here to be able to talk to you about systems change and what it means. But I'm not going to talk to you technically about systems change. I'm going to talk to you about your person and your role and the possibility of what you can do in this nation and for our country, our countries around the world. And so when I got asked to come here, I was thinking about what would I say about systems change, because we don't seem to be doing so well right now. And I thought I would share some of those lessons because I think that they're important, because in many ways, as I'm traveling around the world, I'm seeing some of the signs of the same things. And I think sometimes we can take democracy for granted. And sometimes we end up hurting people only to discover that the world becomes too toxic for even us. And I believe around the world, that's kind of where we're at, is that we've designed a society that is increasingly not working for many people. And that is systems change. It is the design challenge. The system is the way we decide to be in relationship with each other. The institutions, the networks, the arrangements that we create that determine how we're going to thrive or decay together. And so I'm going to share some insights around systems change that I think will be invaluable, because I think that they're the path forward, whether I'm in Australia, and I've been coming back here for 5 years, so I've got a good sense of this place, but I am by no means have all of the context, but I've seen enough and heard enough to see a lot of the signs of some of the things I see in the States that are problematic. So I'm going to share that. The first thing I want to share is I think leaders have gotten it all wrong. I think leaders have gotten it all wrong because leaders have gotten away from the most fundamental thing that privileges leaders. And that is to listen to the damn people that you're privileged to be in relationship to.
Yes.
And no matter where I go, our institutional leaders are not listening. And I'll give you examples of what not listening looks like. I shouldn't have to be on a stage at a conference and it's all men anymore. That's not listening. I shouldn't have to be on the stage and it's all black folks anymore. That's not listening. I shouldn't be on the stage that wasn't co-designed by people from community. That's not listening. I shouldn't be doing work in community that folks don't want me to do, but I'm doing it anyway because I got a damn grant. That's not listening. That's not listening, folks. And if you want to know why America is in the situation that it's in right now, it's not because of the racists. We already know what they're going to do. And they're a dying breed, and this is their last gasp anyway. Because the reality is, the majority of children born in America are already children of color. So the deal is done. So that's just the way it's going to be. But the problem is, our institutions have been afraid to lead on behalf of the people that are the most vulnerable in our communities, the people that we've intentionally oppressed. And even more important, we've been afraid to actually say we oppressed them. So if you want to talk about systems change as a leader, the first thing is to actually center yourself and understand, who are you in service to? Who are you in service to? Every system has a purpose. That's why it exists. Every system has a purpose. And in America, the systems that I find to be the most results-based, the most beautifully, elegantly designed, are the most racist. And that's unfortunate, that the racists are better at results-based work than we are. That's true, folks. If you go back and you listen to, I can just go back to the 80s with Lee Atwater, and I listened to Lee Atwater, who was a political politician. His Southern states strategy to divide the nation, and you listen to that and you bring it forward to where we are with Trump, and you see the institutions that they built. You see the public policy agenda that they built. You will see that it is no surprise that they're getting ready to stack the Supreme Court. They believe in population level impact. They believe in structural change. They believe in collective impact. We believe in charity work. We believe in charity work. We do these little bitty programs and services, and they're important, but it's cleanup work in the face of that. It's cleanup work in the face of a juggernaut like the right, who is trying to design a nation to be destructive and oppressive. And for too many years, we've been actually complicit in that. Folks come up to me every day and say, can you believe that Trump is in office? I'm talking about other Americans. And they're usually white. I'm like, hell yeah, I live this every day. But you're surprised because you actually haven't been listening. That's my damn point. You weren't listening because community people have been telling you for years, this is the pain that we feel. And what you centered in the room was, can I talk about those black folks? Can I talk about those poor folks? Will my funders want to hear that? Will the business community think it's okay? You traded your soul to be liked. You traded your soul to be in relationship. You traded your soul, you traded your nation because you were afraid to step into your leadership. The good thing about democracy is that you have these moments of destruction and renewal. And I'm sharing that story with you because Australia and so many places around the globe have an opportunity to show us a way out of it. There is great genius in this room. And that genius will only be activated if you get away from all this technical stuff for a moment and center yourselves on what is the purpose that brings you in this room? What is the purpose that you want to achieve together? And can you have the audacity not just to be bold on a flip chart piece of paper or a PowerPoint, but can you be bold in your state capitals? Can you be bold in institutions of power to speak on behalf of those folks who aren't privileged to be in the rooms that you're in? To do the work to design a society that actually works for everybody now. It doesn't have to take 20 plus years. I'm always fascinated by people who tell me to wait because change takes time. That's a wonderful statement to make when your family's not suffering. Business doesn't take 20 years to get a policy agenda passed. Why should it take a 20-year agenda for us to get that passed for children? Folks, we've been playing the wrong game. We've not been playing a systems game. And don't get me wrong. When I talk about charity work, I don't think charity work is bad. It's not a derogative term to me. Charity work is the reason why I'm standing on this stage, because people cared enough to offer supports to me that helped me get out of poverty. But the problem with charity is that it keeps opportunity too random. I made it out, but my sisters did not make it out. Charity doesn't take on the design challenge of why opportunity is too random. I want you to hold the important work of charity. Programs and services make pathways for folks every day, and that is essential work to do. But don't get it twisted. The design challenge still must be addressed as well. We can do the systems work of improving programs and services so that they are done with greater quality and greater effectiveness. And at the same time, we can design a society that is not oppressive. We can design institutions that don't hurt people. What I want you to think about today is, how is your institution hurting people today? Pain is right in front of your face and you don't see it. I'll give you some examples. Just take my own journey. I think I'm about like 7 weeks into taking over as president and CEO of PolicyLink after being there for 8 years. And what's really heavy on my mind is to do exactly what I'm telling you. Actually, how do I listen? How do I listen to the most vulnerable people in our country? How do I listen to the voices of indigenous people in our nation and lift those voices up? How do I make sure that PolicyLink is a model of inclusion as an institution? And there are things that I can do today to make sure that my institution doesn't hurt folks. I could actually hire folks who actually don't go to elite schools, but are highly talented. I could choose to do that today. I could choose to make sure that women are paid just as much, if not more, than men. I could do that today. I can actually make sure folks who go by a different gender preference have a safe space at PolicyLink and are acknowledged. I can do that today. I can make sure I don't make more than 5 times what the lowest person makes at PolicyLink. I can do that today. The reason why I'm telling you what I can do today is because I'm already authorized as an institutional leader to do mostly anything that I want to do. The question is, what will I do? And too often our institutional leaders, when it comes to making these important decisions, we act like we have no agency, but we do. We make decisions every day. In America, in our institutions, as an example of how the right has beaten us at our own game, it takes us 20 years to find one person of color to hire. It takes us 20 years to get one person of color on a board. It takes us 20 years to find one woman that can serve in a C-suite. How can you get mad at the right if this is how we are performing? That's unacceptable, folks. That's not systems change. That is just gross malpractice. That's not systems change for it to take that long when you already can make the decisions. So as I think about my role, I'm thinking about what I'm going to ask you to do today. I'm asking you to step into your power. To not ask permission anymore to create the world that you want to see. Because the reality is you're never going to get permission. No one's going to authorize you to make this world a better place. That's within your ability to do right now. I want you to use ChangeFest as that catalyzing moment where you made a critical decision in your life. You made a decision that you were actually going to listen to the most vulnerable, that you were going to serve the most vulnerable. And you were going to live by the standard of being able to answer the question when you lie in bed at night, is anyone better off because of my service? That's the only question that matters. Is anyone better off because of your service? And I want you to get honest about the scale of your impact. I want you to be honest about the scale of your impact. I want you to be honest about the power of your dreams. How many of y'all have big dreams in here? How many of y'all are afraid to tell people your dreams because you know they'll laugh at you? Think you're crazy. You gotta live into your dreams, folks. The democracy depends on it. And I'm gonna tell you a story. Because every time I live into my dreams, good stuff happens for me. Every time I don't, bad stuff happens. You know, I'm only in this position right now because when I was 17, I decided to go into the military because I didn't know how to get out of poverty. But I saw my dad in the military, so I decided I'd go in the military. I spent 8 years in the military. And then I got out of the military. I didn't know what to do after I got out of the military. I just got tired of taking instructions, wanted to do something else. I started finding my equity focus. And I wanted to go to college, but I had bad grades because I just wanted to play sports and chase girls when I was in college. And so I had to figure out, how do I get into the university, grad school, and get them to pay for it? So I went to the dean. I started working at a foundation. I go to the dean and I said, you want me in your program because of my proximity to money and power. And if you put me in this program, I'm gonna rock it. Just give me a chance. Put me on provisional admit. I'll pay for the first semester. They put me in that program. They paid for the rest of my schooling, all the way through my doctoral work. I'm telling you that story because I had a dream about what I wanted to do, and I knew I needed to get the skill. And I knew that if I stood in line, I would never gotten into that university. And so I got out of the line, And I just hustled my way into academia. And then I got serious about school. But I also got serious about finding my way into places to work. And it was at that foundation that I learned the power of bringing people together, what you all have here, and the amazing leaders that have brought this together. And it was at that foundation that I also got fired. This was the first time I had to choose. I got fired in my 20s at a time when all I had to do was be quiet, and I could have gotten anything that I wanted. I could have gone to the White House. I was making nearly $100,000 in Kansas City, Missouri in the Midwest in the 90s. That is really good money, especially coming from poverty. And I had the audacity to expect that after-school programs and the like for poor kids would be of the same quality as those of us who had money to pay for stuff. And I wrote a report that asked one simple question on the cover of the report. It said, would you put your children or grandchildren in programs that perform this way? I thought I was doing the right work. I'm using my brain, I'm using data, I'm showing what's not working, I'm holding people accountable, and my board looked at me and said, really good job, and wanted to bury that report. And I gave it to the Kansas City Star. That was strike one. They then wanted to go after a sales tax to pay for after-school supports, an $80 million sales tax, put it on the ballot. I go out and I started organizing gang members and others, and we get all this stuff done to get the package ready. And we get right up to the ballot effort, and they don't want to do it. And I kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And ultimately the board decided that they had to fire me because they couldn't control me. Now this was the best gift for me at this moment, and this is why I'm telling you this around systems work and trying to link all this together. I got actually fired because I knew who I served. I refused to negotiate away the standard that poor kids deserve to have the same type of quality after-school supports as everybody else's kids. And I refused to look white folks in the face and back down. And the sanction was they fired me. And that meant that I needed to leave Kansas City because I was not going to work anytime soon. And I moved to DC and I started working in DC. I ultimately ended up getting a fellowship with Harvard and the US Department of Housing and Urban Development, and that's how I got my career back on track. I'm telling you that story because that was the best gift that I ever got. It was the best gift because it made me choose who was I really allied with. It's one thing to talk a good game. It's another to have to say, do I keep my luxury, my comfort, my stability? Or do I really want to be in this fight for real? Well, after I got that fellowship with Harvard or HUD, I moved to Chicago and spent 11 years in Chicago, and I was confronted with that again after working in the federal government, in that I couldn't have the impact that I wanted to have. And now I've got a bigger problem. I got a family, I've got property, I'm starting to accumulate some wealth and assets. I got this wonderful job security. You don't get fired from the federal government hardly at all in the United States. And I could just sit there really and just ride that out for the next 20 years. But my heart said that that's not the work that I wanted to do. And so I ultimately ended up leaving HUD to come across the country to work for a darn nonprofit with no stability. You only eat what you kill. Right? So that's the way it goes. But that decision was, again, one of those choices that was invaluable. Sometimes you start your career in your 20s and you're really enthusiastic and idealistic, and by the time you get mid-career, that's gone away. I've had over a 20-year run of being idealistic and having a ball because I've listened to that voice inside. Going to Oakland darn near tripled my income, and God knows how it quadrupled my impact, because I got a chance to work with President Obama on Promised Neighborhoods. And in that work, trying to make it results-based, is how I found my voice at the national level. around quality, its systems, etc. And what I'm sharing with you today comes out of what the last 8 years at PolicyLink, because Promised Neighborhoods taught me something. It taught me not to get excited about programmatic work anymore. For me, that's just me. I'm not telling you what to do. I decided not to get excited about programmatic work anymore because even on a good day, if I'm holding population level interest, Promised Neighborhoods at best serves 300,000 of the 14 million kids living in poverty. So while it was a great federal win to get that program, get it designed, get it baked into the federal system, and it gives communities $30 million over 5 years, for God knows how long that will continue. We've been able to continue that work under President Trump. It's not a systemic approach. We use all the right language, but after 5 years, folks haven't really focused on the systems. It crumbles again. So even though we use the term cradle to career, if we're lucky by the 5th year, we've got the 0 to 5 pipeline built, and then it goes away. What it made me realize is that there's a bigger design challenge. It's not programmatic. Promised Neighborhoods is charity work. It's good charity work, and it's going to do some good in people's lives. But the bigger work for me and PolicyLink is to design a nation where actually Promised Neighborhoods is not needed. That is actually the work. To design a society where Promised Neighborhoods actually is not needed, only for maybe that last 5 to 10% of society that is always going to need us to care for them. There's always going to be people in society that need us to care for them. That's where our charity should be focused. The rest of our work should be on liberation, folks. Liberating people so that they don't need our supports. Because our institutions are doing their job. Our institutions are serving. What I want you to take away from ChangeFest, that this is that moment. When I got that realization about a year and a half, 2 years ago, and started thinking about, well, what does that mean for me? It became a really lonely and depressing moment for me, because sometimes as a leader, as you're transitioning from one thing to the next, it gets tough to find that vision. And I kept thinking, at this time, Angela's talking to me about, Michael, would you like to run PolicyLink? And I'm thinking, I would love to, and what would I do? And I'm trying to find that vision to make the leap from Promised Neighborhoods to running PolicyLink. And I'm churning, and the harder I think, the more emptier my head was getting. It wasn't coming to me. And then I remember what my dad used to say. He used to say, Michael, sometimes you gotta watch as well as pray. He used to tell me, sometimes you just gotta be still. And so I just got still, and I started reminding myself, what do I really care about? What really moves me? And so I started sitting for about 6 months with, what do I care about? And all I could begin to see was people's faces. Faces of folks that I've run across to in this country. And there was one thing about all those folks, that they were the most vulnerable. It wasn't the privilege of me being in all these rooms of privilege that I'm in. The thing that I cared about was those folks. And so I started thinking, well, what would I do? And what is this moment? And then it reminded me of how to put it all together. A leader's job is to know the moment that you're in. Trump has actually given me a gift that I would have probably never been able to act on in another environment. He's given me the gift of knowing that our democracy is going to crumble if we don't get our shit together. And that this is actually a moment where I can actually have the audacity to dream big, and people will at least be on the journey. This is one of those few moments. In the 90s when I was coming through, I could have had this vision and it would have never happened. So I decided to come out with this notion of winning on equity. That this is the moment to not play at equity, creating a just and fair society, to not nibble around the edges, but to create the juggernaut that is the response to the right's ability to create an oppressive society. For us to actually live into creating a just and fair country. And to actually have the audacity to set the standards for what would that mean for housing, for education, for policing. That is the journey that we're on. Now, why am I telling you this story? Because when I originally told people this, they thought I was crazy. They said, man, I wouldn't do that. It's going to be tough. It's going to be hard. No one's going to let you do that. This is one thing about coming from the hood. You don't worry about people letting you do anything. You don't mind fighting. So this is a great moment because now that winning on equity idea is starting to take hold. And I've gotten enough traction that now I'm leading on it. So what will this mean for the nation? For the first time in the nation, we're actually going to have a standard. If you think about our equity movement, like all of you in this room, where we're all not just doing separate things, but we're coming together to say what winning on equity would look like. And we're going to have the audacity to build the infrastructure to fight for that and win, and to hold electeds accountable for it. We've never had that. If you came to America and said, what does winning on affordable housing look like in America? You're going to get a gazillion different answers. If you came to America and said, what would winning on making sure that policing wasn't oppressive look like in America? We'd give you 1,000 different answers. If you said, what would water quality look like across this country since it's so bad? 1,000 different answers. We're going to land the 1 to 5 transformative things that would unleash transformation for the 100 million folks living in 200% of poverty in America. Folks, that was just a dream 6 months ago. That's all it was just a dream. And no one authorized me to do it. No one gave me the idea. Well, I take that back. Yes, they did. Every step of my journey, community have been telling me what we should be doing. I'm choosing to listen. I actually was able to conceive that vision because I've actually been listening to community. And what I want you to think about today is, what does community need you to do transformatively? Not to provide a momentary respite, but radically change this society. ChangeFest suggests something. I've heard the word bold used a lot. If you're going to be bold, you must possess radical imagination. You must possess radical imagination to see things that nobody else sees. That's your currency as a leader. That's your gift, folks. It's not for someone else to see. It's for you to bring it into possibility. What I'm asking you to think about today is, what is that transformative thing in you that needs to be ignited and needs to be expressed outwardly so that you can join with each other in this room? On so many levels, you all are ahead of us in the States and don't even know it. On so many levels, you all are ahead of us. And that's why I love coming back, because I learn something new every time I come here. And what I want you to think about is, do not blow this gift that you have. You have a nation that can get things done. You've got an infrastructure that is solid. You've got relationships that will get things done. And this is not a moment for you to think small. This is a moment for you to lead the world and what it looks like to advance equity. And where you start is by how you treat indigenous people. Finish that business. Finish the business of honoring the way you hold up and uplift your indigenous people. Because when you get that right, everything else will be made right. It's the same for us in America. And I'm asking you not to think about whether the collective will want to do that. I'm asking you to hold the interest of the collective, but I'm asking you to start leading that way yourself. For those of you who have agency, you all have it. The question is, when will you activate it? Honor community today. Don't have another meeting that wasn't planned with them. Don't design another group of services and programs that they don't want. Get in relationship. Get in relationship, folks. This is the work for our generation, whether you like it or not. And we can either get it now, or we can watch our democracies crumble. Because I don't know if you've seen it or not, but there is a movement across this nation to set our nations back 70, 80 plus years. There is a movement of folks who really do want to aggregate power in a few hands. And for those of us who think, oh, it will not matter, it will not impact us, I wish you could come to America and see how our neglect has us all suffering. My parents took me out of private school in the 70s when they started busing. Now, my parents did that thinking they were doing something good for me, and they were. They didn't know better, but what they seeded was the conversation on what type of public education system should we have. We lost the battle on that. We gave that away. We walked away from the public education system. And today, we have a horrible public education system. So what does that mean? It means that as our cities come back, all of our shiny downtowns, the average American can't afford to live in those downtowns, especially if they have children. Because now you have to send your kids to private school and you can't afford a rent and mortgage and private schooling. That's what neglect gets you. If you've heard of the Flint water crisis, that water crisis is all over the country. Water quality is horrible all over, unless you can afford the infrastructure. So when we thought we were hurting those people, that it was those people's problem, payment has come due in America. Trying to screw over black folks has created a society that now is too toxic for white folks. I was telling someone yesterday, the sad thing is this: black folks actually listen to the racist white folks. We did what they told us, to go get educated. Stop being lazy and get a job. That was their frame, their narrative for us. The most educated group in America now is black women. And those racists who told us to go get a job and to get educated are still sitting in those small towns with no college degree. They couldn't even move to the cities and compete with us now. And I say that not to say it negatively. I'm saying it to show you how toxic oppression and racism and exclusion becomes. That before you know it, the world has left you by, and the shit that you were preaching, you can't even hold up to the standard. And that's what's happened in our nation right now. That's why you see all those folks so angry. They just aren't at that stage of anger where you have to take what they call maybe acceptance, where you have to say, you know what, I accept that I'm here by my own doing. It's still too easy to say it's those people. Today it's Mexicans now. It's the Mexicans coming across the border. No, it's not. We're giving away, throwing away billions of dollars of produce because of what's happened with immigration, folks are no longer picking that stuff. So why am I telling you all this? This is your moment. This is your moment to rise up. This is your moment to be great. This is your moment to go to these sessions today, reflect, and think about what is your purpose individually. Because if you activate that purpose, you'll be able to join in a powerful way. What is your purpose individually? What is the change in the world you want to see individually? And then who do you need to join with to create change at a greater level? Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Step into that fear. Abandon yourself to the strengths of the folks in this room and watch what happens. You have a chance to do something that few nations have a chance to do, which is to stay on the leading edge of creating a prosperous society and not have to slip backwards. We're cleaning up a mess because we didn't learn that lesson. ChangeFest is not just a conference. This is a call to action. This is not just a conference, folks. This is a call to action. It is an individual call to action for you to dig deep and really put it all on the line for what you care about. This is your legacy work. Don't settle. This is your legacy work. Let's leave here today. Let's create a society where everybody can participate, prosper, and reach their full potential. That's the unfinished business for all of our nations. If we do that, we will create an equitable society. If we do that, I guarantee you, we will be able to lie down in bed at night and answer the question affirmatively, yes, that our brothers and sisters are better off. So thank you.